Welcome to the Leadership Exposé podcast. This podcast is for purpose-driven leaders at diverse levels and organizations around the world who are seeking to scale and transform their leadership, to level up their business, and to create an impact in the lives of people all around them. Business and boardroom topics, trends, innovation, transformation, and the intersection with leadership is the focus. We enable success. I'm your host, Stephen Paul. In this episode, I am delighted to have with me Karan Rhodes. She is the founder and CEO of Shockingly Different Leadership, a leading professional services firm who is changing the way HR functions scale up during peak period of work. She has worked with global companies and is an author of the book Lead at the Top of Your Game. Through her research and leadership, she has pinpointed the top 7 leadership tactics executed by successful individuals. We'll hear about this and more. Karan, welcome. How are you doing today?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for having me, Stephen. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. You know, just before we started the podcast, we exchanged where we're located.
Yes.
Do you want to just share for the purposes of our audience, where are you based?
Yeah, sure. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, so on the East Coast, but I consider myself a citizen of the world because I feel like I'm back on planes every day, going to different locations, consulting. But yeah, based in Atlanta.
Awesome. So Karan, we're curious to hear about your journey. Where did it all begin? I mean, obviously leadership is a big thing and you've had a great career, but really
Yes.
just curious to see where did it all begin? You know, tell us a little bit more about that and what's the intersect between your personal and professional journey.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'll just say by education, I'm an industrial organizational psychologist. Was absolutely fascinated with psychology, but realized that I had a dual love for both psychology and business, and I didn't want to become a professor or to open up a clinical practice. So I kind of married the two, if you will, and found myself in the world of human resources. And found out early I was interested more in the strategic side of what I call the people side of business, more than the more transactional side. So I grew my career. I think I've touched worked in almost every function in human resources, from employee relations to talent acquisition to talent development, to organizational development, you name it, I've probably been into it. But most of my executive levels, part of my career has been in leader development and in human resources, managing human resources functions. So that's kind of a combination of the two. My last big role in corporate before I founded my own firm was spent almost 14 years in a variety of roles at Microsoft. And the last big role was leading up their global high potential leader organization that had about 4,200 individuals at different career stages from around the globe.
Yeah. Is what you're doing previously within these global companies, is it different from what you're doing now compared to what you're doing previously, or are you bringing all those elements and kind of enabling the HR components of it? Yeah. Okay. Go on.
Yeah, great question. Previously, most of my career, to be honest with you, has been in corporate America. So with Microsoft, AT&T, Blue Cross Blue Shield, quite a few different industries in different roles within HR, as I mentioned, on the strategic side. But end of 2013, decided to try to hang my own shingle. Started out as a solopreneur. I have a very varied background, as you've mentioned, and I started out I've always been passionate about leadership development and what made the most successful leaders tick and how did they get to be that way. And so I started out as a solopreneur, continuing with the lessons I learned in corporate around high potential leaders, and wanted to kind of make my mark in that realm.
Mm.
What I found out, though, as I've been working and consulting with clients, is they really loved the dynamic background that I had and wanted additional assistance and things I did have experience in, like company restructurings and big meaty change management projects, or helping to advise or work with the CHROs in the organization. And so about 2 years in, we actually expanded our services to incorporate all three of those: HR, talent development, and organizational effectiveness.
Mm.
And then had to change the business model as well to also bring on employees and consultants to help support the scaled growth we were experiencing and continue to experience to this day. So I've been very thankful for how the business has grown. It is not just me. There's a whole team behind all of this.
Yeah.
But we're doing well. Thank you.
So, when we talk about HR, or the people office or the people function, have you seen much changes happening over the decades? I mean, like previously, I know with some organizations, you look at an HR function and they think of it as all these soft, touchy-feely type of things. That's what HR does. And then you mentioned about the transactional side of things. In one of the conversations I had with an HR leader or HR function is that, our function is a personnel function. And I'm thinking, well, you're actually more than a personnel function. So my question here is, have you seen much changes in the role of HR, as in from a value adding perspective, having a seat at the table type of thing?
Yeah, I actually have. When I first started out in HR, we used to have to fight to have a seat at the table with the executives and C-suite to make decisions. Although I believe if you talk to any HR professional or executive, they want to bring their expertise to positively impact the business from a strategic side and integrate that into the business strategy. It just took a while to kind of break down the glass ceilings to be able to do that. And we're still accountable for the meat and potatoes of getting people paid, hiring them into the company, all of that good things. But I have seen over the years, especially now, post-pandemic, that business leaders are really struggling with how to reimagine, rethink, and reconstruct their businesses to be competitive in this new world, and how to keep employees even more productive and engaged, especially when a lot of them are facing the reality of integrating, hybrid work now into their business models. And so, yes, to answer your question, yes, HR has become, has transitioned, in my opinion, from more of the transactional side to being a nice combo of transactional plus strategic.
And leadership is a big component of that. And your focus these days is primarily around the wider aspects of leadership. So curious to hear about that and the top 7 leadership tactics that you've been mentioning.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to share with your audience. Well, just to give you a little background at a 50,000-foot view, actually about 2 years before the pandemic, I had actually commissioned a research study on some of the people who were identified as the highest contributing, high achieving, high potential, you name the moniker you want to use, within organizations. So we actually studied 10,000 leaders across the globe in a variety of industries and a variety of companies of different sizes. And out of that, we were trying to ask the question or solve for the question, what were the top most successful leaders doing that 95% of the other population weren't? Because if we could isolate those behaviors or tactics, it would be, in our opinion, a great piece of work to help inform other companies so that they could help both build stronger leaders and stronger leadership pipelines within their organizations, while also helping to improve employee engagement, because employees would be recognized for the things that they would do. So long story short, you fast forward to, we finished it right before the pandemic, believe it or not, the research. And I ended up writing the book during the pandemic, since we had a little bit of time on our hands, just a little bit. But there was a long list of behaviors and tactics, over 100 that we fleshed out. But what was interesting is there's a clear line of demarcation in the top 7. So the top 7 do have a lot of, I'll say, competencies and skill sets that you need to do those. But the top 7 were the ones that really made a difference. And so I'll just quickly run through them, and then, you can go, we can go deep if you'd like. But the top 7, and this is not in any particular order, but the first tactic was those who were leading with intellectual horsepower. That is all about using your expertise to kind of spot trends and see what's going on in particular markets, and bringing that back to help improve the organization. The second tactic was all about leading with courageous agility. And courageous agility is about having the courage to stand up and do the right thing for the company, business, or their people, even when the future is unclear. So those who were able to lead with courageous agility definitely were able to impact their organizations. The third tactic was all about leading with strategic decision-making. Kind of self-explanatory, but it was those leaders who were able to lead a great decision-making process and with key stakeholders were those that were most successful within their organizations. The fourth one was all about leading with what I'll call intrapreneurship. That means, really focus on bringing forth and executing ideas to help improve products and services within the organization, to help the organization overall, or the company overall, be more successful. So those who had those great ideas and were able to carry them through the resolution or implementation were thought of very highly. The fifth tactic was all about leading with stakeholder savvy. Stakeholder savvy was, kind of in the realm of emotional intelligence, understanding all of your stakeholders, having great interpersonal relationships with them, making sure that you're very conscious of different perspectives and work styles. That whole interpersonal game, those who were able to conquer that were very successful as well. The sixth tactic was leading with a drive for results. That's being very tenacious about completing any kind of big projects or activities. And then the last tactic is leading with executive presence. So those that had the pizzazz and composure to be able to deliver either written or oral presentations in a way that could convince others to follow along on the journey, those were the most successful as well. So those are the 7 that kind of popped out for us.
Amazing. And they're spot on, because when you look at a leader in any company, at least from my experience and from all the leaders that I speak with, I mean, those 7 dimensions or 7 tactics really sit well with a particular leader and how they execute themselves in any situation.
That's true. And one's not more important than the other, and you'll use them all in any kind of initiative you do. It's just, if you have the skill sets in all 7, you'll be able to draw that card and go deep when you need it, right? So yeah, they all are equally as important.
Yeah. And
Was there one that popped out for you, one or two?
the courageous, stand up with courageous
Courageous agility.
agility. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And for me, I learned that, well, I wasn't good at it probably until about 15 years ago.
Really
And, thankfully, I also had a coach, initially a mentor and then a coach.
nice.
And, I wouldn't, I would generally sit quiet, or I would always have I would say a fixed mindset of sorts, the way I would approach certain conversations or people and so forth. And things just completely changed when I started getting a little bit more aware of myself, but also through my coach and through the companies that I worked for. Thankfully, I was working with some great people, great leaders as well. So they encouraged
Okay.
me, and it makes a big difference, in terms of the environment that you are in. Makes a big difference to actually execute well, which was good. So one of my things that I was going to ask was one of the questions I was going to ask was, out of the 7, were there any findings that you received or in your view currently, where people not excel very well out of the 7? Like, are they like top 3, for example, in your view, that people don't generally excel, but all they're like,
That's a great question. Well, remember, we studied those who did excel in
okay.
these, so that's what kind of popped out. But to your question, when we go into organizations and teach these to groups, the ones where people kind of struggle, and it kind of it depends upon the individual. Similar to you, you kind of work with your coach and you identified areas that you maybe wanted to evolve, or improve upon. um, it's kind of based on your own demeanor. But I will say, courageous agility, while everyone universally finds that very important,
Yeah.
sometimes people struggle with when there's pushback. So
Mm,
when there's pushback with executives or their teammates, handling the pushback and the hard conversations seem to be a challenge.
mm,
They're okay with standing up initially and sharing their perspective, but when there's pushback or conflict or questioning of their positions, that's where kind of universally folks find that a little bit challenging. And we work with in our workshops with
yeah.
how to have those kind of tough and hard conversations,
Yeah.
and deciding whether your point that you brought forward, you should continue with it as is, or if there's any room for a merging of the minds,
Yeah.
a little bit of what feedback people are providing you along the lines with what you're trying to achieve. So we work through a lot of that in our workshops.
Yeah.
I will say that, and especially for my more introverted individuals, I'm on over the chart extrovert, so
Mhm.
it's not as much as a trouble for me. But for my more introverted learners, leading with executive presence sometimes is a bit draining. Not that they can't, and not that they can't excel at it, because many of them do. But it takes a lot of their energy and a lot of thought to get them to the comfort level to
Yeah.
be able to present their ideas in such a manner that will increase followership. So
Yeah.
many find coaches to kind of help work with them on that piece. But those are the two that kind of pop out,
Yeah. And
that people struggle with
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, I completely agree. And that executive presence, keen to just hear your elaboration on that one. What's your view around best executive presence so that a person can exhibit, just top level.
Yeah, top level. It's hard to put a finger on executive presence, but you know it when you see it, right? But those who do it really, really well, they're very prepared. They have a lot of grit. They're very passionate about what they're trying to either lead or share or convince or influence others with. They have a lot of composure.
Mm.
And even when there are questions or pushback from their audience, whether it's their team members, or maybe it's the executive suite, or maybe it's clients,
Yeah.
they are not rattled.
Yeah.
They meet people where they are to try to talk through um, critical decision points to convince them that they have done the right research. They know what they're talking about. The individual should trust them enough to bring them along on that journey. And so a lot of executive presence is passion, preparation, and the delivery of your, key points that you're trying to make.
Yeah, and I've also found absolutely, and I've also found that acknowledging constructive feedback in an open setting from whichever level of a leader they are, whether it's an executive or team member, and being able to, like you mentioned, having that composure to respond,
Yes.
acknowledge, demonstrates that you yourself are actually quite confident about it, and you may not know the answer to certain things.
That's true.
But you're able to actually reframe and acknowledge that.
That, and too, and some of the best leaders I've seen have been absolutely wrong when they were presenting a point or a situation. And it was so powerful when they got additional data through the discussion, when to realize that their positioning wasn't quite correct. Some of the more powerful leaders, to your point, acknowledged it, took it in, and said, hey, I think I need another minute or two to kind of go back and research and rethink this.
Yeah.
I really appreciate everyone's feedback, and just know I'm taking this seriously. And let's regroup, in 2 days, and let's talk through this again. You don't have to always be right. And most of the times, leaders realize that they're not many times.
Yeah. So Karen, that was really helpful around the 7 tactics. You're having a lot of conversations with leaders, with companies of different sizes.
Yes.
What, in your view, are the types of conversations companies need to be having, either at the executive level or at the board level when it comes to leadership? What do they need to be prepared for, in your view?
Well, Stephen, gone are the days that people are usually at a company or an organization for 10 plus years, right? You have to take advantage of an employee's tenure while you got them there from day one. So a lot of the conversations I'm having with, especially the C-suite, is how we can empower their organizations to get more out of their employees and more out of their the mid-level leaders in a way that both pleases those employees as well as delights the company. And so we really and truly, I always say that SDL is focused, our company's focused on the people side of business.
Yeah.
And my big mantra to all executives are, people initiatives are business initiatives.
Yeah.
And since they are business initiatives, we need to take them just as seriously and infuse them and integrate them in everything that you do. When we go through their business plans for the year, I dare them to identify one that doesn't touch on the people agenda in some way, shape, or form. And 99% of the time they can't, So we try to recommend integrating early on in planning a dual conversation. And that's why HR definitely should be at the table, whoever the lead HR individual is, to talk through, okay, well, we have business strategy A. How is this going to impact our people and people strategies? And what do we need to do to back into what we need to accomplish by X date? And having those kind of rich discussions is very important for business planning and business execution, especially during these highly competitive times.
Yeah. Workforce, very important, and how it actually impacts the workforce.
It does.
Absolutely important. Karen, what are some of the dark sides of leadership that are rarely talked about?
That leadership is hard as heck, Stephen. It is hard. It can be hard. It can be, I won't say it universally is, but it can be hard. It can be draining. If not handled appropriately, it can impact one's physical and mental health as well. I can't tell you how many key executives I have spoken to that, because I respect the level of confidentiality. I always say these are our four walls; it won't go past me. They really struggle. Those who are really doing big things are sometimes struggling mentally and physically and emotionally, trying to keep up with the rigor and the demands that true top leadership requires.
Yeah.
And so making sure that you build into any leader development program or leader care program time and space to do what they need to do to be at 100%, is critical.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be publicized, but some people need therapists or coaches. Others just need a couple hours of time off for me time, just to decompress a bit. Some need an accountability buddy that is outside of the organization, where their job is not in jeopardy, but they can still share. It shows up in different ways for different people. But we have a whole, program that's all about caring for those who are in leader positions and helping them stay at the top of their own game.
Awesome. And I know you've just touched on this, but if I was a individual or a individual leader or a business looking to receive your solution or engage with your solution, how would a conversation between you and I sound like?
Oh, can you ask the question again? You're saying how to find me, or
yeah,
what?
no, if I was looking to receive some of your support as an individual leader or as a business, how would that conversation between you and I sound like initially?
Oh, initially, I got you. Yeah, so every company is different, every leader is different. So our very first conversations would be all about helping me or a person on my team, if they're assigned to your company, better understand the business model itself, better understand the actual dynamics that are going on in the organization. I usually ask to interview a couple of key people within the organization at different levels and career stages. So those who are newer in their careers, mid-career, and executives, to kind of get a better feel for what is going on in the different respective areas. So there is a whole discovery exercise that we would start with. And then out of that, we would move towards better understanding what is the true problem you're trying to solve, and pulling back the layers of the onion of that to see kind of what is compiled in all of that. Sometimes people say, well, I want to, I don't know, I want to implement a diversity and inclusion plan. And so we'll say, okay, well, that is a great aspiration, definitely something we can help with, but help us understand what is the problem you're trying to solve. Is it you're trying to, recruit more people of diverse backgrounds and perspectives? Is there a business piece that you're missing? How is this truly integrated? We'll just ask some really tough questions to make sure we're truly understanding the problem you're trying to solve. And then once we combine the discovery with better understanding the business strategy, then we work with executives like yourself to co-create what that solution will look like. So to be honest with you, there is absolutely not one canned solution that we have at Shockingly Different. We, kind of work with people where they are, and we try to propose something that's going to really work, that's realistic.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah,
Karen, we're coming to a close very shortly. Is there any
sure.
closing messages that you'd like to share or highlight here?
Well, I would just like to say, and it's probably obvious that your people functions, and actually people are calling them things differently now because of the whole importance. More organizations are calling them their people learning and culture functions
Mhm.
more than just HR anymore. But it's spot on
Yeah.
because it is such a critical component of most organizations. I don't care if you're a 5-person company or you're a 150,000 person company, but for those, I know you have a lot of individuals who are entrepreneurs and executives. Please make sure to keep a seat for your people function at the table. They are there to help and are more than willing to help. And they can honestly advocate um, for the highest level of organizational effectiveness you could absolutely imagine and get the most out of you and your people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Wise words from Karen, and a challenge to all the leaders there. People and culture function, HR function is such a critical area for the business
Yeah.
and for the vision and mission of that business. So, Karen, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Stephen. Oh, one quick thing. May I give a gift to your listeners really quick?
Go for it.
Okay. If they are curious about, kind of what their own leadership tactics are, there's a quick quiz that we have. We have an actual research-based assessment that we have with our programs. But if you're ever curious about which of these tactics have the most influence on you, we call them your leadership triggers. We have a free quiz for your listeners if they'd like. They can go to shockinglydifferent.com/trigger, singular, TRIGGER. That will bring them to the quiz page. And it's literally a 1-minute quiz they can take, and they'll get a summary of which of those 7 has the most influence on them. And sometimes that's very interesting because you'll know how what aspects people can do to best influence you and bring you aboard their team. So that's kind of maybe interesting to some of your leaders.
Amazing. Actually, I'm going to take it.
Oh, please do. Please do.
And for our listeners, definitely we'll get the link up on the site when we publish this as well. So stay tuned for that one. Thank you very much, Karen, again for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Stephen. It's been a blast.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, okay, folks, thank you very much for listening in, and stay tuned for our next episode where we hear from a fintech innovator and how she is making a difference in that ecosystem. Stay tuned for this. Cheers. Hey, I hope you enjoy the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You're now seeing this part of the video also because you consume some of my content, insights, and teachings. Maybe you've been to my LinkedIn page or website or seen other social media ads or listened to my podcast. I'm Stephen Paul, a business and transformational executive coach, strategic advisor, leader, and board member. I've been in diverse roles, corporate executive, entrepreneur, and worked with businesses and firms of all sizes, built and launched businesses, created high-impact boards, and so forth in 4 continents. I get it. I've been there, done that, but what is different is I bring a unique perspective and a playbook. I've helped 100+ business leaders just like you to scale and align their leadership top teams, the board, and overall business for growth. Leaders like Ivana from medium-sized company in the EU who grew 150% and expanded globally in under 5 months. After she started to work with me over facilitated sessions in an initial 3 days, I helped fine-tune their strategy and align their leadership team and board to be a cohesive driving force to achieve their dreams and outcomes. I want to teach you the same thing and more on how to scale and align your leadership team and board so you can increase your business growth and value. Get clarity on what is the next right strategy for you. There are multiple ways we can work with you. Number 1, click the link for a free non-obligatory 60-minute initial strategic session. Let's get a feel for your dreams, your vision, your challenges, and let me convert that into a route map for you where we can co-develop and co-pilot. Number 2, enroll in an innovative and intuitive digital online course that I have curated, created to help you transform. It's called Unshakable Resilience. It is the ultimate program for individuals and business leaders like you who want to be equipped at a personal and professional level to respond to any form of challenges or in crisis situations and take on opportunities with grit, resilience, and build a mindset of success. In essence, you want to be unshakable, thrive in crisis, take on opportunities in the face of adversity, and build a success mindset. So, click the link below to learn more on how I can personally help you individually and your firm to scale and align your leadership team and business and pivot in a transformational way. And for you to experience this, whatever the challenge you're facing, get in touch with me. Let's discuss, and I will share my insight rapidly to enable your transformation. Click the links below.